Hello, everyone. I'm Caleb.
I'm Joshua.
Okay.
We're brothers.
This is part 2 of our Creation Saga. You know, last week, I apologize for you ADHD viewers. We know we have them. It was long. This episode will be longer. It's just how it is. Last week, we only got through 2 verses in Genesis. Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. Today, we'll be discussing the 7 days of creation. Yeah.
I like creation, man. I'm going to tell you, day 7, it's like my go-to.
Really?
I feel like God and I have an understanding here.
Explain.
Like, I'm just picturing, like, 7th day, God and I just chilling on the sofa. We're flipping through some of his favorite, God doesn't watch TV, he just watches Times in History, so we're going through some stuff.
He has a remote like that?
Well, the remote's from me, because I don't have superpowers like him yet. But it's just cool, and I'm like, hey, you want a cheese puff? And he's like, don't mind if I do. I think it's a good day of rest.
Well, I know many people, Josh, argue, is there a literal 6 days of creation, 6 24-hour days? I mean, that's not possible.
It's not?
Our finite minds can't comprehend that because we look at the scientific evidence with radiocarbon dating, which can't detect carbon on any object past 10,000 years, and we deduce, that rock is 20 billion years old.
But that's interesting. How would you know that if you can only go back 10,000 years?
Anyways, we're going to discuss creation theories from a Christian perspective today. There's several of them that we're going to talk about, such as the young earth creationists, old earth creationists, theistic evolution, day-age creation, intelligent design, gap creationism, progressive creationism, time dilation creationism.
And if you're thinking this is a lot, it is a lot.
Okay.
Why are there so many versions of this? I don't know. It seems like people are today say, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't like this part about something, so I'm going to create my own version.
That's true.
But this is a very important thing. In case you didn't think it was, I want you to think about this again. Your children in school are being taught a specific version of how everything got here. And I'm willing to bet that it's in direct opposition to how it really happened.
That's true.
So it's important for you at home to know what happened and be able to challenge the ways that aren't true.
That's right. So let's first talk about old earth creationism. They want to hold to the current fossil record of evolutionists that the earth is 4.54 billions of years old. And they look at the days of creation and they say that the Hebrew yom for day really means age. And thus you get the day-age creation theory in which it was ages that God created everything. And that leads us to progressive creationism in which they said God just very slowly over time decided to create things. He was just taking his time. That's okay. That's what God does.
Then you have theistic evolution.
Theistic evolution.
These are the good people who say, you know what? God actually was the one who created the tiny fish, who climbed out of the primordial ooze, who then became a lizard, eventually a monkey, and this gorgeous man you see before him.
I think there's a conflict with believing in Darwin. And
at the same time saying God created Darwin to do this,
That's theistic evolution. So anyways, the next level that we see is young earth creationists. And these are the people that believe the Bible as it is written. They say there are 6 24-hour days of creation. And that's typically where we fall into that camp. They say yom is a day. And they look at the genealogies in Scripture. So-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so, the stuff that you skip over.
Always skip.
And they get the earth to be around 6,000 years old. And the current Jewish year on the calendar is 5783. Many say that date's off. But it still gives you that understanding that we've been around for 6,000 years. And one would presume the 7,000 year will be the millennial reign of Messiah.
So if you were skipping the begats like me, you missed on it.
Okay.
Time dilation creation has
that's an interesting
nothing to do with birthing a baby.
Yeah.
This tries to put into account the distance in light years in the galaxy and how God went boom and the universe was expanding, and as it expands, the change in gravity, like Einstein's theory, dictates general relativity, that light may be longer when it's further away from the Earth.
Yeah, because they look in a telescope and they see the light of a star and they said that took 365 million years to reach us, but they're saying, no, this is just because of how things been and God stretches out the heavens and gravity and all that,
And if you thought that, believers never had good marketing and there was ever truth in marketing, the next one, intelligent design.
That's right. Totally has nothing to do with creation and God. This was created by people who want to infiltrate secular schools of thought and really schools as it was by looking at nature around us, which verifies that there's no randomness in the universe. There's nothing that happens by accident. So they say if there's no randomness, there's no accident, then someone must have designed all this stuff, and that designer must have been a creator who was outside time and space. So that's all that intelligent.
That's a good way to be able to talk about it in public school.
Right.
We touched on this last week, gap theory and creation.
That's right.
That gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, and usually gap theorists believe that the earth is billions of years old, that the rocks do show
that's
age.
true. Well, we believe there was a gap between Genesis 1:1 and 2, but we don't believe the earth is billions of years old, but that God renewed his creation, after that gap, and he made everything new.
God didn't make stuff out of the vintage store clothes. He created new clothes to begin with. He didn't take the old
That's
rocks.
right. He gave us something new to start with. If you want to understand why the earth looks old and the rocks look old, we'd like you to, we're supporting this documentary on YouTube called Is Genesis History? Someone else made it, but they were geniuses in science and creationism. They discussed looking at the rocks in Mount St. Helens, those magma rocks, which carbon date to millions of years old, but we know are only a few decades old. They explain how things can blow up. Yes. Anyways.
Genesis 1:3-5 says, Then God said, Let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day.
So here's the first day of creation. God makes light as a measurable, variable entity. You have light. Energy comes from light. You have light rays and X-rays and gamma rays, the full spectrum, electromagnetic spectrum. I mean, there's so many different rays, but it all came from this light. It's very interesting. This is when God asa. He made something pre-existing material. That's the Hebrew verb that's used there. And he's light, so he probably made light out of his own essence.
So these were God's first recorded spoken words in history.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's in John 1:1-4. It says, In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made.
That's
Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
Well, this was the first day of creation. It was a Sunday. Creation started on a Sunday. And very interestingly, this is where the Jews get the days beginning in the evening. The days start in the evening. And you may wonder, okay, it says the evening and the morning were the first day. How can that equal one day?
How can that be one day? It
doesn't make any sense. Well, a man in the genius of theology and science in the Bible, Dr. Chuck Missler, who has since been to be with the Lord, he explained that the word for evening in Hebrew, erev, originally did not mean evening or twilight, that it meant obscuration, a mixture of encroaching darkness and entropy. This, in a sense, meant disorder or chaos. And the word boker for morning didn't originally mean morning, but it meant to become discernible, to be able to see and perceive something and to bring order to it. So thus, on day one, God brought order out of chaos. It's pretty cool. That's all it means.
Yet again, if you don't know the Hebrew, get some.
That's right.
Genesis 1:6-8. Then God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day.
This is a very interesting and can be a very confusing day.
A lot of firmaments here.
Waters and firmaments and space and all that. And waters in Hebrew is mayim, and the firmament it talks about is rakia, which means a solid expanse. And this, this represents our sky and our galaxy that was created without stars, of course. This is not when stars were created. But what I find interesting is the word rakia is used for that same expanse, the sea of glass that the throne of God sits upon, that you read in Ezekiel, that mobile throne of God led by the four living beasts. But some may say, okay, space itself is not a solid expanse. It's an empty vacuum. That's what we've thought in science for years. But recently in science we've discovered that space is like a digital cascading waterfall of energy, of subatomic particles. And they have weight, they have grit. Space can be bent, Josh. It can be torn, it can be punctured. All this was actually explained in the Bible. The Bible explains heavens can be shaken. It can be burnt, split apart like a fabric. It's like a scroll that can be unrolled and stretched out. And we have so many scriptures, which will show on the screen to explain all this.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go through all of them.
Yeah.
The waters themselves, though they covered the earth, they were also told to be a firmament or expanse, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that this means that beyond the universe there's a layer of water?
That's what some people think, because there's waters, they say, then a firmament, then more water. So what could that mean? Some people think at the edge of the universe,
There's an ocean?
there's an ocean, a layer of water. Isn't that interesting? You know, whether
Those
that's
flat
true or
earthers
not.
that think that?
I don't know.
They sail off the flat earth and into the ocean again?
Well, another theory is that on the original Earth was a layer of water that surrounded the atmosphere called the canopy. And this canopy created this perfect utopia-like environment on Earth in which people could live to extended lifespans. You hear like 900 years old and all this time.
From the pressure and everything.
Yeah, from the perfect atmosphere that blocked out the harmful UV rays of the sun. Then when the flood came, it punctured that atmosphere and the rain came down. But there's another thing I want to discuss, and that's the possibility when you study matter. You know, there's 4 states of matter.
Not 3.
4. What's the 4 states of matter? Liquid, solid, gas, and plasma, right?
Plasma. That's the one everybody forgets about.
Plasma. So we know that when we have a gas and we heat it, we add more energy to it, it becomes a plasma. And Josh, plasma are like subatomic particles, smaller than atoms. They're like electrons, and
That's what they shoot people with in Star Trek.
that's right. And they lack locality. They're like literally everywhere and nowhere at once. And you can't see them, but they have weight, and it's said that one small little area of space, Josh, contains more energy than the whole power of the sun.
Wow.
And that space is full of these subatomic particles of plasma, whereas physical things, like you're holding this remote, those are made of atoms, and atoms are mostly empty space.
That's interesting because it feels not empty.
It feels not empty.
It feels hard.
But that's not what really, you know, the real world, the invisible, has more dimension and weight to it. So all we're saying
So
is,
could it be a different dimension?
it could be a different dimension, is all we're saying. It could be like the second heaven, you know.
Seventh Heaven was a show.
Yes, not seventh heaven, second heaven, which is this unseen realm where the prince and the power of the air resides. We know that angels are trapped in the abyss, and maybe this abyss is part of the second heaven, which would be waters. You know, very interesting. I don't know, it's just a theory. It could be any of those. It doesn't really matter.
So what's the Hebrew say about this?
Well, the Hebrew...
Waters and fire.
Well, the word for waters is mayim. Word for heavens is shamayim. To become shamayim, you have to add ish, fire. So water and fire make heavens, like we just described the states of matter.
Usually water and fire for me puts out fire.
Yeah, you add fire energy and it becomes gas and then becomes plasma. I just find that interesting anyway.
What I find interesting is that, you know, we know today that we operate in 4 dimensions.
Yeah.
But there was an idea all the way back to the 13th century that there are actually up to 10 dimensions.
That's true.
So somebody in the
Ancient Jewish
1200s
sages thought that, yeah. But now today, the scientists believe we are living in 10 dimensions.
So when you think about it, you hear all these words, you hear all these Jewish phrases. People love to jump to the conclusion that this is all a metaphor, that none of it could be literal.
That's right.
But now science is catching up with the concepts of the Bible, which show 10 different dimensions. So these different firmaments and layers and everything like that could very well be different dimensions.
Yeah, they're called hyperdimensions. You know, we live in those 4 dimensions, and the beyond it are called hyperdimensions. So it is a possibility. That's all we're saying. But the important point from this day is God doesn't bless this day.
That's what I was about to ask you, because usually, you know, you read from a kid, and you're like, and in the evening and was this day, and God said it was good. He doesn't say it was good.
He doesn't say it's good.
Why is that?
Because it's Monday. I just
Mondays are not
it was
good.
a Monday. Mondays aren't good.
That's genius.
No, some people think that it's because this space, you know, this second heaven, these principalities of evil, we're now occupying it, so God didn't call it good. But I think it's very simple. As our Jewish mother always says, that God wasn't done at this creation as making it habitable for humanity. And thus on the 3rd day, when he completes that work to make the earth habitable, that's when he blesses it twice.
There you go.
On the next day.
Well, Genesis 1:9-13 says, Then God said, Let the water below the sky be gathered to one place. Let the dry ground appear. And it happened so. God called the dry ground land, and the collection of the water he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the land sprout grass, green plants yielding seed, fruit trees making fruit, each according to its species, with seed in it upon the land. And it happened so. The land brought forth grass, green plants, yielding seed, each according to its species, and the trees making fruit with the seed in it, each according to its species. And God saw that it was good. So there was an evening and there was a morning, a third day.
So third day of creation, 2 blessings. This is a Tuesday.
Doubly.
And that's why Jews get married on Tuesdays. A double blessing.
Is that why they get married on Tuesdays?
Absolutely.
Every time I'm in Israel, man, Tuesdays is like, day of the marriage.
Right.
We can't go anywhere without somebody like da 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 da.
And many people may say, well, why did God create all this greenery when there's no sun yet? He doesn't create the sun till the next day. It's very confusing. Don't you need the sunlight to photosynthesize and all those plants?
Not in my Eden.
My wife has a hydroponic garden on her kitchen counter where she just uses light to grow.
Are you supposed to say that online?
Vegetables, Josh. She's growing vegetables.
Oh, vegetables. Yeah, she's growing vegetables on her countertop. Okay, cool.
Anyway, she just uses light to grow these vegetables. I think God was displaying his power, that just from the light that he created could create life. There was no sun, and everything was warm and had a perfect climate. But most importantly, later on in history, God knew that these fallen angels, these fallen B'nai Elohim, they would take their seat as gods and have mankind worship them. And the chief deity of all these gods would always be the sun god. You have Inti, Sol, Lu, Ra, Baal. They would be the sun god, and they believe that the sun god gave life. And God is proving to here, no, I gave life. And I don't need the sun to give life. I find that really interesting.
I find it interesting that those are all Mortal Kombat characters, and that's why you shouldn't play the game. Revelation 21, 22 through 23 says, I saw no temple in her, for its temple is Adonai Elohim Sabaoth, and the Lamb. And the city has no need for the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God lights it up, and its lamp is the Lamb.
Interesting. So this is the new heaven and the new earth, and we see there's no need for the sun. God's returning to that state where all life is okay because he's the light, he's the Lamb, and he gives light to everything. So I think that's cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Genesis 1, 14 through 19, moving on to the 4th day, brother.
All right.
Then God said, let lights in the expanse of the sky be for separating the day from the night. They will be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. They will be for lights in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the land. And it happened so. Then God made the 2 great lights, the greater light for dominion over the day, and the lesser light, as well as the stars for dominion over the night. God set them in the expanse of the sky to shine on the land, and to have dominion over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So there was an evening, there was a morning, and a 4th day.
4th day, cool. So first day, God made light, or in Hebrew. On this day, the 4th, God makes Mayor, the light holders or the light bearers. And some people think that these planets just gave out light. They were just dark, muddled masses, just like the first earth. And God renewed them because it's still Asa. He makes something out of nothing and returns that light to them once again. But the important thing to remember, as we've spoken many times before,
there was aliens on all these planets.
There was no aliens on all these planets.
Had to be aliens in the planets.
God said he made all of these stars in the heavens to be a calendar for mankind to maintain the Moedim, which are so very important, to maintain his signs and his wonders. We know that in the news you're seeing a lot of alien spaceships showing up, UFOs.
Chinese aliens,
balloons in the sky. These are all just demons manifesting with light, creating holograms, deceiving mankind to try to get them to worship them.
The balloons are real.
The balloons are real.
The balloons are real. We're talking about the UFO sightings that are manifestations.
Anyways,
Isaiah 14:12 states, "How you were fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning." But a more direct translation actually calls Lucifer the morning star.
Very interesting. So he was one of these morning stars, Lucifer was. And what was the morning star? People may not understand, but a morning star was the first star or one of the brightest stars that shone at dawn. And these stars were worshipped in the ancient world in many religions. In Egypt, they worshipped the star Sirius. In most of the other religions, it was Venus, the brightest star at dawn. And so when we read the book of Job, it says, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy, we see that these morning stars were spiritual entities, and Lucifer was head of them. He led them, the choirs of heaven, to sing, Josh. But we're going to take it a step further, because we know throughout Scripture, angelic beings were given dominion and position to guard over elements and things throughout Scripture. We see an angel over the waters, angel over fire, angel over each of the four winds. Well, if Lucifer, who is described as the anointed cherub in Ezekiel 28, he was the covering or the morning star placed over earth, and it's possible that God placed morning stars over the other celestial planets. And thus you get in history these fallen angels that demand man to worship them, and we get them over each of our planets. We get the Roman gods, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Mars, all morning stars, all fallen angels that we now worship.
So interesting that these things that we call mythology actually have some kind of rooting or grounding in things that happen.
But it's more important, because guess what? Those are just morning stars. There's a morning star that is greater than them.
His name?
Yeshua.
Boom. Really? Revelation 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star.
So much brighter than those other morning stars.
Get out of here. Day 5.
Yeah.
Genesis 1:20-23. Then God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures. Let flying creatures fly above the land across the expanse of the sky. Then God created the large sea creatures and every living creature that crawls, with which the water swarms, according to their species, as well as every winged flying creature according to their species. And God saw that it was good. Then God blessed them by saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the water in the seas. Let the flying creatures multiply on the land. So there was an evening, there was a morning, and it was the 5th day.
This is a special day, Josh, because this is, other than Genesis 1:1, the only other time that we see bara. God creates something out of nothing. These are special creatures. Why? I don't know.
So interesting. That's very interesting. So it wasn't until the 5th day of creation and the 1st day of creation that God created something out of nothing. Everything else was...
Or before, the original heavens.
The original heavens and the earth. In this account of
creation. This renewal of the 5th day. It's just interesting. And now I'm going to get on my soapbox. This is just important to me. Everybody.
Guys, a little public service announcement. In case you didn't know what he's about to do, he's about to show you how dinosaurs were created on the 5th day.
I like dinosaurs, okay? Years ago, we talked about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are in Scripture. They're awesome. I was a little kid. I was a dinosaur boy. But we look at dinosaurs in Scripture are called tanin. And I think there's a mistranslation on the 5th day, because we see tanin show up on the 5th day. When you look at the translation of King James' Scripture, Josh, it was in 1600s when the Bible was translated.
1611.
Tanin is translated in English as dragons. And did you know, in England and elsewhere around the world, they had medieval, era bestiary guides. These were zoological treatises that kept track of all the animals, encyclopedias of animals. Dragons were living, breathing creatures. All different species of dragons. These were dinosaurs. And they were hunted to extinction because they were thought to be a nuisance by the early 1800s.
HBO hunted them down.
I'm just telling you. Thus, by 1841, when the word dinosaur is coined, they are nearly extinct. And the word dinosaur means like terrible or monstrous lizard. How did they know it was lizard by finding these? But they just found a few giant bones. How did they equate that to being a lizard? Because they knew they saw dragons beforehand. All I'm saying is that. But on this day, the correct translation should be, then God created the great tanin, the great dinosaurs, and God created the living creatures that swarm the waters, and God created the winged flying creatures. There is no designation for Yam next to tanin, Yam being sea creatures. And we see in Isaiah 27:1 the designation of Leviathan being a tanin. We know that in the book of Job, a Leviathan is tanin, and you get land, air, and sea tanin listed in Isaiah 27:1. All I'm saying is
dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. There had to have been dinosaurs created on the 5th day. I know people say dinosaurs were created on the 6th day. I say 5th day. Why would God just create water dinosaurs on the 5th day, and then on the next day He create the land and air dinosaurs, which doesn't say that anywhere on the 6th day. That's all I'm saying.
So on an important note, though, we don't know why. Why is there no sea, no ocean on the new earth?
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, I've considered that before. At the end of the millennial reign, we get a moment at the great white throne of judgment, and where it says in Revelation 20:13 that the sea gives up their dead. that's the sea was the guardians, the container for the spirits of the dead, and then they're judged. So possibly on this new heaven, new earth that happens afterwards, there's no need for a sea.
No graveyard, no sea.
No graveyard, no sea.
Genesis 1:24 through 25. That's right, we're at day 6. Woo! Then God said, let the land bring forth living creatures according to their species, livestock, crawling creatures, and wild animals according to their species. And it happened so. God made the wild animals according to their species, the livestock according to their species, and everything that crawls on the ground, each according to its species. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea, over the flying creatures of the sky, over the livestock on the whole earth, and on every crawling creature that crawls on the land. God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the land and conquer it. Rule over the fish of the sea, the flying creatures of the sky, and over every animal that crawls on the land.
Whoa, that's a mouthful, but you made it, the end of the 6th day.
Whew, and I'm telling you, I think he's intentional on proving his point, because he says everything like 2 or 3 times backwards in reverse.
That's true.
And I did it for this, and I did this for this, and
that's
this was
right. And he made the kangaroos, all the marsupials, he made the dung beetles, he made the llamas, all the kinds of animals he finally made on this day, and he made Adam, made in the image of God, man, and we'll discuss the specifics of the creation of man next week, so you'll have to join us for episode 3 of the Creation Saga. But on the 7th day, God rested.
My day.
7th day, God rested.
Day 7.
And I think the important point that we should draw from this whole episode, it has to do with the day of rest, but it links back to the Hebrew word yom. People say, God didn't create the earth in 6 24-hour days. Well, let's go to scripture in Exodus that verifies that he did.
I'm glad you said that, internet people. Exodus 20:8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy.
So what that says there, 6 yom, 6 days you work, 7th day you rest, because 6 days, 6 yom, he made everything. On the 7th yom, he rested. Can't be any more clear than that.
It's about time something's clear.
But this is talking about the Sabbath and why it is important. You see, the Sabbath was one of the Moedim. Remember, we referenced the Moedim. When God created the stars and all that, it was to keep and maintain the Moedim. The Moedim pointed to the Messiah. There were shadows of Messiah, the 7 feasts of Israel. They foretold his first coming, his second coming, and then their Shabbat, which is a representation of the millennial reign, our time of rest when we're finally glorified. And it's very interesting that Sabbath was established before the law. Huh. And it was a very serious command under the law. If you violated Sabbath, guess what? It was death.
Dead.
Immediate death. And Yeshua, he was the fulfillment of the Sabbath. And he even violated the Sabbath 7 times by healing. 7 different times chronicled in the Bible.
We know this, Matthew 12:8, where it says, for the Son of Man is the Lord of Sabbath.
That's absolutely true. So Sabbath is a matter of the heart, guys. It's not a requirement. It's your time that you set apart for the Lord. It's your time to seek him. Your time to be re-energized. It's for you. It's for your body. And it shouldn't just be localized to 1 day a week. It should be every day. And so I know there's a lot of argument. Saturday, is it Sunday? Should I press that elevator button, or not? It's a dangerous thing.
Get into that.
Yeah, but I don't. It's just your time that you set apart for refreshing for God. It's a time made for you.
It is the time made for you. Mark 2:27. Then he, Yeshua, said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Remember?
Yeah, Yeshua is our Sabbath rest, guys, as it says in Hebrews 4.
Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all ye who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest.
And the Sabbath will be completed when we receive our glorified bodies in the millennial reign. It's that time, 6,000 years the earth was at work, and the earth will finally receive its rest, and we will finally receive our rest just like Adam in the garden. So.
Ezekiel 46:1 says, this is what the sovereign Lord says. The gate of the inner court facing east is to be shut on the 6 working days, but on Sabbath day and on the day of the new moon it is to be opened.
So that's talking about the millennial reign. We with our glorified bodies get our time of rest, But the earth, those who survived and are still mortals, they will only worship God on the Sabbath, on 1 day a week, and on the new moons. So that's just amazing how Sabbath is important to God. Everything comes full circle in God's intent for mankind and creation. One thing points to another, and it's all perfect. It literally is all perfect.
And that day of Sabbath is meant for you to focus on Him. It's not about not doing work for the sake of being lazy with cheese balls like me. It's for the purpose of communing with Him. Which is why I was in Israel that time, in that elevator on Shabbat, my Jewish brother looked at me and he looked at the button, and the Shabbat elevator was broken, and he was like this, and I was like, brother, you want me to go to hell and push that button? It says as a foreigner in the land, I can't push the button. So there, I pushed the button anyway.
There you go, Josh. Anyways, I hope you join us next time for the third part in our creation saga, when we'll discuss man being made in God's image.
You're welcome. Oh, it's so sweaty in my robe. My 7 days of rest and